Hi, and welcome to another interview with a circular thought leader. My name is Carsten, and I'm happy to be joined by Adam Grant today.
Thrilled to be here. Thanks, Carsten.
Adam is a professor at the Wharton Business School and has been recognized as Business Week's favorite professor and also as one of the 40 world's top professors under 40. Well, obviously, of course, Adam is also the author of the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal's best-selling book, Give and Take, a revolutionary approach to success. I'm really excited, Adam, that you're here with me today.
Thanks, Carsten. I'm thrilled to be here.
So I've read your book, and like a lot of other people, and I take that there's a correlation between giving and being successful. Could you share with our viewers what that correlation actually is?
Well, the correlation was not at all what I expected. So when I measured across different kinds of jobs and industries, people's tendencies to be helpful and generous toward others, I found that the more giving you were, the worse you did. So the least productive engineers were very giving. They spent so much time helping their colleagues that they literally used up all their energy and couldn't get their own work done. The lowest grades in medical school and the lowest sales revenue, too, belong to the helpful and generous people among us. And I thought that was really sad news for those of us who enjoy helping others and take pride in the idea of giving. And then I looked at who are the best performers and found that, in fact, the best performers are also the most helpful and generous people among us. The most productive engineers, the best medical students, the salespeople who generate the highest revenue are the ones who devote a lot of their attention and time and energy to helping others. So giving can either sink your career or it can accelerate.
Well, if we look at the global landscape of social or economic or political issues, youth unemployment, climate change, world hunger, what have you, all these topics seem to require a lot of very intensive collaboration and giving from each and everybody. However, in many, if not in most cases, we actually see what I would call a deadlock situation because people are actually fighting for their own well-being and advantage. So in your view, what makes it so difficult for people to give up part of their own benefit in favor of a bigger success?
Well, if you look at the data, many people make the mistake of assuming that success is zero-sum and that in order for me to succeed, you have to fail. Or, conversely, I think the worst case is assuming that everybody else is a taker, is trying to get as much as possible from me. And so that means if I share my knowledge or my connections or perhaps even my time with you, that you might take advantage of that and exploit it. So a lot of people live in fear that, if they are helpful, if they're generous, if they're giving, then they will end up sacrificing their own success.
So does that mean that you are born a giver or taker, or are you socialized to be one?
Well, like most questions in the social sciences, it turns out to be a mix of nurture and nature. But I would say in the case of most acts of giving, the evidence much more strongly supports nurture than nature. We learn whether to be giving or taking, whether to be concerned about others or more selfish from our early role models, from many of the life experiences that we have. And there is, in fact, evidence that people end up, as they age, becoming more concerned about others. There's a spike, for example, at midlife, where people start to think about, how can I give back? What kinds of legacy will I build? And they become more concerned about contributing to future generations. And I think our job is to figure out, how do we cultivate that mindset earlier?
Interesting connection now, because that sparks the question, so what could actually the education sector do? What could I do to actually encourage others to try and, let's say, give at least as much as they take?
If I knew the answer to that question, I would be out trying to fix education. But I think there are a few places that we ought to start. The first one is to take out a page out of Elliot Aronson's research on jigsaw classrooms, where Aronson realized early on that you could overcome stereotypes and prejudice, even discrimination, by setting up classrooms in which children had to work interdependently toward a common goal. A sort of a standard example of that would be you're going to do a book report on a figure like Nelson Mandela. And 4 children are going to work together. They each are responsible for a different period of Mandela's life. They have to read about it, do some research on it, and then present it to the group and eventually the class. And when children have to collaborate like that in the classroom, they begin to see each other's strengths and figure out that they can all be better off if they help each other. I think that would be one very powerful step. The other that I would just highlight is to say that we know from about half a century of research in psychology that it's much easier to change people's behavior and then watch their attitudes and values fall in line than it is to try to shape attitudes and values from the start. What I would do is I would basically encourage people in classroom situations to engage in small acts of giving and helping, whether it's sharing a toy or teaching a little bit of information to your classmates. And then as you do that, try to reinforce for them that identity around being somebody who takes time to be concerned about others. And then I think as you do that, that actually starts to crystallize as part of the self-concept. So I start to see myself as a student or as a kid who really cares about helping others.
Maybe the last question, trying to create a link to the organizations that many of us work in. So if I listen to you, I would love to understand now, what is the role of organizations and their assessment or their usage of incentive systems? Is there such thing as a right or wrong incentive systems? Do we actually need any?
I don't think there's any way to escape incentives entirely, because even if you eliminate standard incentives, there will be some behaviors that get rewarded, others that get punished. And I think that we have a responsibility as leaders and managers to try to figure out how we can design incentives to do the least harm. I think that the way that I look at this from the standpoint of give and take is to say it all starts with the hiring process. And many leaders assume that if you want to build a culture where people are going to give, then you should hire a bunch of people who are already naturally givers. And that turns out to be less important than screening out the takers, because you bring one giver into an organization and you don't see this mass increase in helping behaviors. But if you bring in one very selfish person, a lot of people develop paranoia and they hold back on their acts of helping and contributing. So if you can do a good job screening out the takers, then you have a group of people who can give freely without worrying about the risks. And what that does is it lowers the punishment associated with giving. And then I think what you have to do is figure out how you're going to evaluate not just people's individual contributions and achievements, but what is the impact of your success on the people around you? And that means performance evaluations, reward systems, promotion decisions have to be based on your contributions to others, not only your individual accomplishments. And then finally, I would say what you really want to incentivize is less the acts of helping, because those are easy to fake. And you'll find that a lot of takers are very smart fakers. What you want to incentivize actually is help seeking, because the vast majority of acts of giving and helping and collaboration in organizations start with a request. And a lot of people hold back because they fear that asking for help is a sign of vulnerability or weakness. And yet, if you don't ask, there are a lot of givers out there who have no idea who could benefit from their help and how. So if you can reward people for admitting, here's where I'm stuck, here's where I don't have all the answers, you can actually create a climate in which givers know exactly where to step up and contribute.
Wow, that was a whole bunch of very tangible and useful ideas and techniques. Thanks a million, Adam, for taking the time and answering a few questions. I wish you a lot of luck with your fantastic book and hope to be in touch.
Thank you, Carsten. I'm a huge fan of the work that you're doing with this Circular Society, and I can't wait to see it take off.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.